Welcome to Replenish, the atmosphere of discovery, where we discover the master's plan for our lives. Okay, today's session, we're going to talk about the F word. We're going to talk about fear. Today's session is on fear. So fear is an emotion, right, that is rooted in the soul that causes you to avoid or run from perceived threats or danger or harm, okay? And it doesn't matter if that perception is real or not, the emotion is real. I'm not talking about reverent fear. Today, I am talking about the fear that involves torment and terror. Okay, so this fear will strike you with panic that makes you run. And when you run, you have no sense of direction, right? So you can be running straight into a pit, or you can be running straight into danger, into more anxiety. You can be running into more torment. You can be running into more fear. And that causes you to separate from reality and get more involved with irrational fears that turn into phobias. So fear is created the moment that you don't have understanding of why something has happened, when you don't have understanding of how something is happening, or when you don't have an understanding of what will happen. Okay, that's when fear is created. When you don't have an understanding of why something is happening, how did it happen, or what will happen, or even when something is going to happen. That's when the fear starts to be created. When you don't know the intent or the purpose behind what you've heard or what you've seen or what you expect, you begin to be fearful. Okay. And fear causes you to begin avoiding and running, and even starting to put up walls to keep from facing the thing that you fear. So fear, because it is an emotion, will begin to control your soul. Your negative emotions should never have that much power to control your soul, right? Your spirit is supposed to be in control of your soul and your body, not your soul in control of what you do, how you act, how you behave, okay? When fear is in control, it creates panic, and you begin to become desperate in order to avoid the people, places, and things that triggers those fears, right? Even at the expense of your health, even at the expense of your safety, and at the expense of your peace. This is what fear does. And so some of the fears that we have today are bigger than our beliefs. Sometimes we find more comfort in fear than confidence in the Lord. And we get comfortable with being afraid because fear itself will make us afraid to confront it, right? So we get comfortable in being afraid because the thought of confronting this fear is more fearful than the fear itself, okay? To have confidence in the Lord, we have to exchange the fear for power over it, right? And so we trust our fears more than we trust who God said we are, right? We trust our fears more than what he said we would do, right? And so what happens when that fear, when what you fear becomes greater than what you believe? What you fear, you now become oppressed by. This thing now is ruling and directing your life. Your thoughts is directing your feelings, your attitude, your perspective, your actions, your relationships, your destiny, right? It begins to start ruling and directing your life. And so whatever you are obsessed with, you become oppressed by. Whatever you are obsessed with, you become oppressed by. If you are more obsessed with who you fear, or the circumstance, the situation that you are afraid of happening, the places you fear, the things you fear, you'll become oppressed by those very things. And oppression, it's not a good thing. Oppression is an abuse of power. These things are keeping you submitted and under its control. You are a slave to everything that you are afraid of because it rules your life. Okay, you've given it authority and power over you. Fear will cause you to make vows that block your destiny. You will never go to certain places, right? You won't try certain things. You won't speak to certain people and certain people groups because of fear. And so it will literally block your destiny because you make those type of vows. Oh, I would never go there. Oh, that's not something I could ever do. You're making a vow that's blocking your destiny when you say those types of things. Okay. Fear-based decisions, they're made when you lack understanding, which is why being teachable is a good quality to have. When you don't want to learn, your ignorance is what paves the way to you making more fear-based decisions. Okay. We make a lot of fear-based decisions with the expectation that it'll still turn out great for us, right? But our perspective is rooted in fear because we don't have the information, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the understanding that we need to make a sound decision. So what'll happen is we just keep making fear-based decisions, not even taking into account that this decision that we are making based on fear may be leading us into a pit, may be leading us into danger. Okay, might be leading us away from our destiny. So you cannot ignore the things that you fear. The fears you have, the fearful feelings, the setbacks or fears of failure, we should have power over these things, okay? But if we don't acknowledge that they are there, how will we demonstrate power over them? The things that you're ignoring, you don't have power over because you have to ignore it to subdue it, right? You can't subdue it by ignoring it. It's just pressed down, but it's still there. The places of fear in us are targets. Every one of them. Every person we're afraid of, everything that we're afraid of, every situation that we fear, they are targets. Okay. And it's a quick way to be unarmed by your enemy with the things you fear. Okay. All someone has to do is find out where your fear is, and they will quickly unarm you. No matter how powerful you think you are, no matter how controlled you think you are, if there's a fear, your enemy will find it because it's a target and they can unarm you by using that fear. Okay. You might say, oh, I would never do this. If somebody knows what your fear is, they can get you to do it. Right. And so there is bondage where there is fear. Fear ties you up. Fear limits you. Fear blocks you. Fear keeps you imprisoned, right? Fear is a barrier that creates more barriers because it makes hiding places, right? Or shelters. It makes shelters for different phobias and trauma visions and physical and mental abuse, right? It literally opens up an all-inclusive vacation spot for all tormenting thoughts, all phobias, visions of traumatizing events, memories of physical and mental and emotional abuse. They are all welcome there in your soul, right? Because of fear. Okay. You can drive out fearful thoughts when you find out that the intention of fear itself is to plant those fearful things, those fearful desires and thoughts, to place them in place of the truth. It wants to vacation in your soul so that the truth has no way in it, right? Because what happens when we know the truth? It sets us free. So it tries to fill all of these places in your soul so that the truth cannot find its way in there, so that it remains there. It remains in control of your life, okay? And fear always looks bigger than what is true, right? Because the truth is simply true. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be grand. Truth is true. Fear makes itself appear bigger. And it makes itself bigger by attaching to your imagination, right? Because our imagination can go, right? Because we've heard things, we've seen things, movies and books and all of these things that we eat, that we digest. It attaches to your imagination. Certain thoughts or suggestions that come to your mind, you begin to dwell on it. You begin to meditate on it. You begin to reason with it before finding out, is this thing true, right? Before I began pondering on this thing and letting this thing take full control of my thinking process, is this true? right? Because the more you let it go, your imagination will continue to let it go as far as it's going to go. So when you place your faith in that fear, you begin to obsess over it, right? You even begin to believe that your fear is the voice of God, right? But it's fear guiding you, not God, okay? And the fear is moving you in the opposite direction of power. Fear causes you to shut doors that were open for you, right? Fear causes you to be offended by the person sent to release you from his bondage, right? It influences you to allow it to maintain control over you, okay? And one way it controls you is through procrastination. Procrastination causes delay due to fears from these collected pieces of unhealed wounds, ignorance, right? Fear of failure. All of these things cause us to procrastinate. So why do we act for fear, but we don't act for peace? We will respond quicker out of fear than we will act on maintaining our peace, right? We rarely take action or do what is necessary for us to be whole, but we take action in fear by hiding, staying silent, by never moving, by just standing still out of fear. We allow fear, anger, and anxiety to produce something in us, but that's not what we're supposed to be putting out. We need to be producing what will multiply and bring peace, joy, and love into this world. That's what we need to be producing, things that are beneficial, not more fear. Okay? Fear cannot produce the truth. It can imitate, come close to it, but it can never become love. It can never bring peace or joy, right? The perfection of love casts out fear. It's the enemy to fear, right? And it's more powerful than fear. When you allow the fear in, the perfection of love becomes tainted, right? So you have to choose. Don't exchange love for fear. Don't exchange your power, your peace, your soundness of mind by giving in to fear, right? It is an exchange. You don't keep peace and fear. You don't have both. It's an exchange. So if you give up your peace, you are allowing fear to come there, right? The minute your peace leaves, fear's there, okay? When hatred shows up, fear is there, okay? When you become double-minded, fear is there, okay? You don't have peace and fear. They don't coexist. It's God didn't give us a spirit of fear, power, love, and a sound mind. So when you give in to fear, you give up those other things. Understand that you are making an exchange. And you haven't even understood that because of your fear of death, because of your fear of failure, you don't want to exchange your sickness or your worry for peace, peace in your body, peace in your mind, right? It is an exchange. You have to choose which one you want to have. Do you want the fear or do you want peace? Because soon as you give up your peace, you have chosen fear. That's the choice you've made, right? Your fear of the unknown, your fear of success, fear of what else you might have to change because you've had to change so much already. These things stop you right when you get close to where you are supposed to be in life, okay? The fear of failure works in your imagination. When your imagination becomes fueled by negative influences, your vision starts to be distorted and even become non-existent, right? And this means the thoughts of your future is now full of uncertainty and fears. This will kill your vision of the future or either twist it and make it something dark, right? And instead of seeing the changes you need to make as a catalyst, you see change as a threat to you, which makes it impossible for you to dream as big as you need to dream. It makes it impossible for you to believe big. It makes it impossible for you to envision a positive future. And that's how it kills your vision and it kills your future. Fear is a formidable opponent to your destiny and your peace. Fear is a opponent, is not your friend. Okay, it is an opponent to your destiny and your peace. It single-handedly devours love because the perfection of love casts it out, right? It turns what you have the power to do into power over you, right? Causing you to submit to its plan for your life instead of God's plan for your life. Fear will cause the extinction of an entire family, of an entire generation, and even a nation, right? And it does this by preventing your growth, by changing your sense of direction, the way you're supposed to be going, right? Fear causes you to stop, turn around, go a different direction because you don't want to confront the things you fear, right? Also causing you to run away from the things that you should be running towards, right? This is what fear does. Fear hides under false humility, right? This is when you intentionally minimize yourself or compare yourself to other people that you feel are more important or more qualified, right? This false humility. Self-depreciation is unhealthy when it's rooted in fear, okay? It is a twisted form of pride. Instead of building yourself up, you break yourself down, okay? Fear hides in immaturity. Fear hides in false innocence. Your emotional immaturity makes you fearful because of what you don't believe you can process or what you don't believe that you can deal with. False innocence, that's this being an imposter. You put on this innocent character to avoid being exposed for who you really are, for what you lack, to avoid being exposed for what you haven't processed, right? Fear will redirect its exposure by blaming ignorance, right? Just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean you can't do it. That just means you need to know or learn how to do it, okay? You even pretending that you don't know what to do, right? It's probably fear. You just don't want to be held accountable. People will suffer intentionally because they fear the will of God, right? They don't really want to know what the will of God is because they are afraid that it may not be what they want. They will live a life of poor health and bad decisions rather than glorify God with the life of abundance, with the life, living a good life in good health and having stability, because they fear the standard that is required of them as a child of God, right? And that fear is there because you've chosen to ignore the power given to you to accomplish living this kind of life. You cannot do it alone. You cannot live a life like this unless you have the assistance of the power of God. And you don't want that power because it exposes and convicts you of the darkness that you still want to agree with, right? So we're talking about fear on today. And I hope you understood what it does to you, how it has controlled your life, how you've been feeding it with your own imagination and your own thoughts, right? How you've exchanged the power that you have inside of you for its power, right? And meaning it now has power over you. It now has oppressed you, right? And you become obsessed with those things, and that's how you live your life. You live your life based on the things that you fear. And so I'm not going there because I fear going there. I'm not going to talk to this person because I fear them, right? For whatever reason, you fear them, but it's now controlling your actions, and it controls your thoughts, and it controls your feelings, and it controls your emotions, right? Because when fear is there, you're afraid to be happy, right? It's the what ifs, it's the unknown. What if I'm happy and this happens, right? So because you don't know what will happen, you fear it. Because you don't know when something will happen, you fear it. And it's controlling every move you make in your life. So my question to you is, who would you be if you were not afraid? And this is something I want you to meditate on over the weekend and write down who you would be if you were not afraid. If you think about all of the things that you fear, and what it has stopped and what it has blocked and how it has imprisoned you, right? Think about all of those things and answer that question. Who would you be if you were not afraid? I hope that you will deal with your fears so that it is no longer a target for the enemy, right? To unarm you, whatever you are afraid of, you will become oppressed by. So don't allow that to be a target. Chase your peace, maintain your peace, fight more for your peace than you run away from fear, right? You run away more than you are willing to put in the work to maintain the peace, to keep the fear out. And we don't want to continue to do that because we should be enjoying this life that we have, right? Not living in fear, not allowing fear to torment us and keep us imprisoned in our minds, in our bodies. There are things happening with our bodies that is because of torment, because of tormenting thoughts. Okay, so caution and fear is different because fear involves torment, right? Caution is something that we have to, keep us from danger. But fear sometimes is just it's a perception of danger, not necessarily that there's danger. So it involves torment and it's stuff that you replay in your mind and it torments you. Caution does not torment you. It's just a sense of there's danger, right? And so you act accordingly, but it's not tormenting. And as far as with wives and husbands, I think when there is a real fear there, like a tormenting fear, is because there's absence of safety, right? There's an insecurity there. Some place in that relationship, they don't feel safe. But then there's also the reverent fear where their duty is to basically keep peace with all men. If you know that something is going to trigger someone, or if someone is not fully delivered in the area, especially with like anger and if they're abusive and things like that, why would you willingly push that button? You know what I mean? So there's the issue where abuse might be happening. It's two things. It's either out of reverence to them, out of respect to them, or there is some form of abuse happening, and they rather keep the peace than to cause more abuse upon them. Some people don't have the ability to leave. They don't have the means to leave. They don't have another place to go. And even if they had another place to go, some people can be so manipulated and so emotionally bound that their mind can't even think of what their life would be without, their spouse, because they've made them so dependent upon them. And so I think there's two different things. If they're being reverent and respectful and peaceable, and then there's the other thing where there's some form of abuse and they don't have a way out or they can't see a way out. And that's the thing, I think, definitely as parents, with that respect that we receive from our children, we also have to love, right? Because it's easier to accept whatever it is, whatever consequence. You might not like it, but it's easier to accept that consequence when there is love there. So there has to be a balance where the love is there too, to cancel out the fear, even in the discipline. So I want you all to think about that question that I asked. Who would you be? Where would you be? How would you be if you were not afraid? I want you to write the things down. And when you write them down, however long the list is, you will see how that fear has been dictating your life. Okay? So that concludes our session. I love you all, and I will see you all next Friday at 3 o'clock. If you know anybody with fear, send them to this video. It should be up by the end of the day. Okay?